Hey, it's Juck. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth. We're Ohioans. He's got it all, man. He's even got the jaw. You know the jaw. You see that jaw, and you're just like, yeah, man, that's a dude. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. It is showtime, and welcome into Buckeye Huddle Prime Time as we are here with you every Monday and Thursday night in the offseason. Now, sometimes that offseason is terrible and there's not a lot going on. Sometimes it's awesome and there's awesome stuff going on. That'll be tonight, as tomorrow, it feels like Christmas Eve to me. The period between the national championship and between the beginning of spring practice is the slowest time in the college football calendar. It's terrible. I cannot stand it. And there is nothing going on at all. We got to manufacture things to talk about. That all ends tomorrow as the Buckeyes back in action at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. And I'm sitting here thinking about everything that we have seen change over the course of this offseason. You know, when we look back, say going into spring of 2024, there is absolutely nothing different about the team. You know everybody. The only thing that's changing is Chip Kelly. You bring in a couple transfers, but even the transfers you bring in, they're known quantities. They're Quinshon Judkins. Like, you know who these guys are. Then you roll into the season, you win a national championship, and you roll into 2025. The offseason that year is what? One of those exciting ones, one of the ones I'm always excited for, which is all of a sudden you're turning over a lot of positions, yet still, because you had so many seniors on the 2024 team, we knew everybody on the 2025 team. We knew who those guys were. We knew what they could do. We knew what Kenyatta could do. We had a good sense what Jalen McClain was going to be able to do. Like all the guys that were stepping up, Caden Curry, into their new roles, we had a really good feel as to who they were. So there was some excitement with Matt Patricia. And then you roll into an offseason like this, and it's just insane how many things have changed. I mean, you can look at the coaching staff, the premier position at Ohio State over the last decade, the Ohio State wide receiver room. Obviously, you get a new wide receiver coach, and we're used to this wide receiver room with Brian Hartline, who, for everything that he did fantastic, wasn't really good at rotating, didn't really tend to give guys a shot to kind of learn on the field. They had to know it all in practice, and that's some coaches' philosophy. Some is, I want you to get almost there and then, go out and take your lumps on the field. That's not Hartline's stance on that. It seems like Cortez Hankton might have a little bit more of that stance, and the wide receiver room having so many questions this year. Might we see a whole lot more of these wide receivers play? I'm be all for that. Like, there's a lot of these guys on the wide receiver crew that I want to see get their first action. So I'm excited for that. Obviously, you've got a new offensive coordinator in Artie Smith, who comes in with, the tight end mind frame. We got a whole lot of stuff going on. Oh, geez. What do we got here? Hang on a second, guys. We've got Tony joining us tonight. My man, Tony Girdman of Buckeye Huddle fame. He is joining me to go over some things, and he is just telling me that the link that I sent him is a bad link. So let me real quick grab him here and send him a new link so that we can get Tony in here with us. He said he's late, but it's his wife's fault. Certainly not his fault. Nothing's ever Tony's fault. But Tony and I are going to chop it up and kind of talk about the starting roster, talk about some thoughts that we've had that have evolved over the course of the offseason. I've had some evolving thoughts on a few of these transfers throughout the offseason. I want to get into that. We got Billy McBride in here, one of our Duck eyes, and he's just getting a scouting report on the Bucks, as he usually does. He's a loyal listener. He comes in peace. We treat him good. He's one of the good ones. We had a Miami guy in here the other night, and he was actually pretty nice too. But I'm pumped, man. So many new freshmen. There are 51, something like that, 43 to 51 new players. Tony's got the official number. Tony's always good for official numbers and statistics. And that is going to be great when he gets in here any minute now, Tony. There he is. Tony!
How goes it?
What's up, buddy? Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Buckeye Huddle Prime Time. It's been a while, my man.
Mm-hmm. You don't invite me much anymore.
I don't like to bother you. You're always so busy. Tony puts out 6 shows a day and writes about 4 articles a day. I mean, there's not a busier man in Buckeye media than our own Tony Girdman. And we, of course, love having you on here, Tone. Tone, I was talking about the offseason this year and previous offseason, just looking back at 2024, we kind of knew everything. We knew everybody. We knew all the players, all the pieces, parts. There was obviously some excitement with Chip and what that was going to bring, but we weren't going to see any of that in spring, right? So even the transfers were known quantities. Then you roll into the offseason of 2025, and even though there was tons of turnover, you had so many of these guys that were fourth-year guys coming to their own, and we kind of knew who they all were. The outside didn't know who they all were. That's why they underestimated Ohio State, but we did. And then you roll into this offseason, and I said before you got on that you would have the official count. How many new faces on this roster are coming into the program?
I was told last week 51 new players. Now that's probably counting some walk-ons, but yes, you will need a program to get out. Certainly all of the new numbers. We don't have that yet, and hopefully the online roster will be updated within the week so that everybody can get a look. But rest assured, as we all arrive and get the physical rosters in our hand on Tuesday mornings, they will be posted to the internet. So you will get to go ahead and write down all of the heights and weights right now. That way you can compare them to the new roster, so you can see who's bigger, who's lighter. Is Bo Jackson now up to 220? Is Julian Say now up to 6'1.5"? They won't get into halves, but you get an idea.
I got Brock Boyd's going to be wearing 11. Brock Boyd's got Quincy Porter's 11, so he's pretty stoked about that. Tomorrow, the first time we get to hear from Ryan Day since the Cotton Bowl, where he was speaking to the national media and also flanked by a couple of his players. In that time period, we've seen a new wide receiver coach, a new recruiting class, obviously a bunch of transfer portal guys out, a ton of transfer portal guys in, 17 guys, biggest class we've had. Art Smith, new offensive coordinator, a real special teams coach. Tony, there's a lot to cover, not a lot of time. These questions for Ryan Day are going to be all over the place. I know you think about this stuff carefully because, you've talked to me about the art of getting these guys to actually answer the question in a way that, is what you're actually looking for. Not really giving them an out to get an easy coach speak answer, so to speak. But when we talk about tomorrow and Ryan Day, not topic wise, but are you leaning towards a 2025 question or are you going 2026?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I am kind of leaning towards a 2025 question, but also 2024 question that pertains to 2026, perhaps. And, I know there are going to be people still asking about the Cotton Bowl, and it's like, it's going to be a timeline and it's going to be all over the place. And they should have done something in January, should have done something else in February to get all of those questions out of the way, because this is going to be a jam-packed 30 minutes of, everything. And we won't give enough attention to the 2026 season because they're still going to be relitigating the 2025 season. And so I'm torn because I do want to ask about the tempo because, theoretically it worked in 2024. It did not work last year. What do you do with that information? But also, I might see something at practice that I want to talk about. So, I might want to, there's the Art Smith thing. Like there's why Cortez Hankton, and there's, just why the need to go get a special teams coordinator now. What were you missing? That sort of thing. And what does that mean? That are you doing anything differently? Will you be more aggressive on special teams? And are you being more aggressive on special teams because you're less aggressive on offense? Because they didn't need special teams before when they were, scoring 45 points a game. Now are you more invested in special teams because you're only going to be scoring 32 a game? So there's all kinds of things. And shoot, what about Tavian? Like what about the portal guys, Christian Allegro? Like what did you like about him? All of these different things that you could ask about any single person. And do you think James Smith, what's the dynamic with James Smith and Edric Houston? How do you see that working? Like all kinds of stuff. And I don't know yet what I'm going to ask, but I'm sure it'll be something amazing or terrible.
Usually is. Let's talk about those transfers. And I want to talk kind of philosophically for a second here before we dive into the roster. I do want to get into some roster talk, but when we look at the transfer portal guys out, the bigger names, guys like Fahim Delane and Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham, Aaron Scott, Jarquez Carter, guys that you would have gotten multiple years out of, potentially with high ceilings, potentially with low floors. We don't know. You go and you replace a lot of them with veteran senior guys in most cases who have got 2026 and they're gone. And even when you look at a guy like a Fahim Delane, who I think is going to be a really good college safety, Terry Moore is going to be better in 2026. When you look at Jarquez Carter, I think is going to be a really good 3-tech. James Smith, probably going to be better in 2026. So when you get into this, where you get rid of guys that have those multiple years they could give you, but you bring in these guys that are known quantities, but you've only got them for 1 year, you're sacrificing maybe that additional time, but you're getting more of a definitive answer at the position. In some cases, a better player for the current year, but you are kind of committing yourself to going back and playing this same game next year, next offseason, where you got to reconstruct several of these positions in most cases. Are you thinking Ohio State's now jumped the Rubicon where you kind of get into the snowball effect, where now you're stuck playing this same game every offseason?
I think you have to play the same game every offseason if you're going to base your foundation on recruiting. And you'll keep trying to get the Fahim Delane, the Blaine Bradford, whatever, comes after that, because that's the lifeblood of Ohio State football. And so I think that sticks, but you also go in preparing knowing like everybody's a 1-year contract and you don't necessarily know that somebody will be back. But the good thing is about that is if you lose Fahim Delane, you can do better. Like you can go and get a better player in, like I said, Terry Moore, or if you lose somebody else, you can go get Earl Little, and you can still make up for it. So I think you try to live in this happy medium where it'd be great if it could be recruits, but it won't be. What they lose 8 of their 26 signees in 2025 have gone to the portal. And, if you think about it, like that's a low number over the course of their time at Ohio State. What's the normal transfer rate right now? Probably half. And so if you're peeling that Band-Aid off right away, at least you know what you're dealing with. And so it gives you an opportunity to deal with stuff quicker. Because let's say, say Fahim Delane comes in this year and he starts. Does that mean he's coming back next year? No. I mean,
Right.
like it doesn't mean anything. So I think what it would have meant is you'd be more willing to pay for what he's asking, as opposed to somebody who has never started and, these players wanting starter money because they've moved up the depth chart. And it's like, well, who's above me? Clearly I'm starting. So shouldn't I get something, shouldn't I be rewarded in that way? And the answer is, well, if you can be, go get it, because, we can move on and go get somebody for that price who has played and knows exactly what we're looking for. So I don't think you can avoid or ever get away from high school recruiting. I think you just have to go in knowing it and try to, Ryan Day says it all the time. You try to spot it in recruiting, but shoot, I mean, you can only spot, like, I think you can spot the ones that or have a pretty good idea won't go anywhere. But you even had the Bo Jackson fiasco after the season.
Right.
So it's like
you saw that coming.
you can't put this past anybody.
For sure. When we look at these transfers, I think the majority of the guys who came in starting on the defensive side of the ball, and overall, I think it's fair to say that the defense is not going to be as talented as last year, but I do think it's going to be more talented than it would have been had you not had this churn out and in. But talking about Matt Patricia and the way Ohio State played defense last year, I think early in the season, we kind of saw the full Matt Patricia experience with the movement up front, with the movement in the back. And it seemed like there was a whole lot more going on. And then that kind of maybe throughout the second half of the season kind of felt like it toned down, and it was more just, I'm going to just have the talent kind of smother you, which they were good enough to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got this feeling, and maybe it's just my homerism, maybe it's just wishful thinking, that this year, maybe that you aren't so talented. We see Matt Patricia with his decided schematic advantage just go absolutely bonkers. And now you've got old guys, veteran guys who can come in, who can execute it, who can take the full plate of Patricia and put it on the field in a short amount of time. And I'm not so sure this defense is going to fall back too much, Tony. What do you think?
I don't see any reason it can't be a top 10 defense again. And I'm not going to put anything past him without seeing it first. And I do think all of the movement and the bells and whistles that they had, like I said, in the first, say, 5 games or whatever, before they dialed it back because they didn't need to do it. I think you're going to see some of that in the secondary with the safeties, all 3 of those guys being completely interchangeable, and you don't know who's who from one snap to the next. I think it's going to be interesting to see Quay Rousseau and the way he's used in terms of, is he a Sam in the penny front? Is he a full-time defensive end? And can he do both of those things? And then what does the Christian Allegro Riley Pettyjohn competition to me is going to be one of the things I watch as much as I can, because I feel like you went and brought Christian Allegro in to start at the will, and then Riley Pettyjohn as that third linebacker, like Peyton Pierce was this year and Arvell Reese was the year before. But how much they play, I think, is another thing that you can do with Patricia, where they can put 3 linebackers out there if you've got 3 good athletes. And they had that last year. There's going to be a drop off at linebacker just because, you can't equal that again with those 2 guys who could cover so much ground and the wingspan and all of that they had. But I still think there's plenty you can do with this defense. And I'm wondering if we see Edric Houston and James Smith together as well. So that there's all kinds of things you can do. And then I just see the note there that you're putting up.
Did you see this, guys? This is our buddy Trent. Riley Pettyjohn might be out for all of spring with a shoulder injury. I haven't seen this yet. Is this breaking news? Have you heard about that?
No, I have not heard about that, but I've been out, so we will see on Tuesday morning. I'm sure that's going to be another guy we're going to be looking for, right?
I mean, certainly somebody everybody was keying on to get some early feedback on how was Riley looking. He's a huge topic of discussion. Trent said he's only seen it on a couple of accounts. It might just be a troll. Okay, hopefully it's just a troll that Trent saw. I'm sure that'll be spreading quick if it's real, maybe it'll be spreading quick even if it's not real.
Yeah, the other fun thing is when you go there in the first practice, or any practice really, especially early on, when you're trying to get an eye on everybody and there's 1 or 2 guys that aren't there, and you're like, well, why aren't they there? And then, is it class? Is it injury? What is it? And so that's always fun too, just checking off all of the guys that you see, and then that way you know who you didn't, because good luck trying to remember who you didn't see after trying to, after watching 80 players and over a course of 60 to 90 minutes, trying to put it all into your brain.
Yeah. Tony, these new guys that came in, we kind of got our initial thoughts on the new guys that came in that we thought were going to kind of be starters. The Alliegros, the Terry Moores, the Earl Little Juniors, the Walkers. Dug into all their stats, watched their film, dug into what their previous fans and beat writers had to say about those guys, how upset they were when they left or weren't upset. my opinion has evolved on a couple of these guys from earlier on to I think where we're at now. I'm going to ask you, but I'm going to give you a second to think about it. I'm going to answer because I sprung this on you. So on the defensive line, I was very, very excited about John Walker. The size, the pedigree, the statistics he was able to put up at UCF, the film, the fact that he's a guy that Buckeyes were in on and recruiting, and it just kind of felt like, oh man, this is cool. Now you see this kind of all come full circle. Not nearly as impressed with James Smith at 3 Tech as a lot of people were. All the penalties, the lack of control, the playing style, and it all just felt like, man, this just doesn't feel like a guy who's going to be able to come give you any kind of step up from where you're at with Edric to me. And I got a really good contact at Alabama who was kind of stunned that he was the number 1 ranked defensive tackle in the portal. And he was like, yeah, nobody is irritated that guy's left. And all that just kind of gave me a bit of a sour taste when it comes to him. And as time's gone on, I've kind of come down a little bit on John Walker, and I'm feeling much better about James Smith. And then I hear that, he's doing really good in the winter workout period, taking things really seriously. And this is the other thing that we never know. These guys coming in sometimes in their last year, like how much do they mean business now? And I think a lot of them do. Like, I'm going to Ohio State. This is my last year. I need that NFL finishing school from the coaches there. And we see some of them really take off. So a little bit of a change there in how I'm feeling about those guys. And another guy that I've come around on a little bit more than I was originally, I don't want to say down on, but I was never really too amped up about Earl Little Jr., especially when I thought that was going to be the big safety signee. And then we saw Terry Moore come on after him. And then it's like, okay, now this feels much better. But Earl, we know, hasn't played a ton of nickel. When he does, he wasn't great there. But he was also getting FSU coaching. And now when we look at the 3-pack of Jalen McClain and Terry and Earl together, being able to kind of go wherever they want to go and implement those guys however they want to, I'm feeling a lot better about Earl Little Jr. Is there anybody who you originally were feeling one way and have maybe kind of come around on or maybe gone the other way?
No, I'm with you on the James Smith thing, because you look at the numbers and they're not all that different than from Edric in terms of,
right,
tackles for loss and things like that. And you're like, well, why is he the number 1 defensive tackle in the portal? But then you also look and see like Jackson Corville was like a top whatever kicker in the portal, and he couldn't get on the field at Ohio State. So how seriously should we take these rankings? But yeah, and then you start hearing more and more, and it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna take that into account. I'm gonna take that seriously. And the same thing with Earl Little, where I think anytime you can just bring in a veteran who has played and team MVP and 4 interceptions, like there's something there to work with. And I know people weren't necessarily thrilled initially with him, coming to Ohio State based on what they saw from him at Florida State. I didn't really ever get to see him play at Florida State until, after. But I don't know how many people look great playing in Florida State's defense, as you said. So yeah. I think there's stuff to work with. I know from the people I've talked to, the people, everybody's feeling good about Earl Little because he brings some tenacity, some nastiness that I think they miss with the loss of Davis and Igbinosun. I think they need to replace some of that in the secondary. I know they're different positions. We also need to see that from Devin Sanchez, that same kind of, nastiness that IGB had, that physicality. But, I think you start to feel like, I'm with you, John Walker. I need to see it. Like, he was very good in 2 years at UCF. I want to see it. I wasn't all that sold on Kyle Parker. I don't know that I am yet. I want to see more. I know he's more explosive than Brandon Ennis. That doesn't necessarily that's not blowing my socks off. I wasn't sure about Devin McEwen stepping up, but like I told you before, he's played in as many games against ranked opponents as Jeremiah Smith the last 2 years. So in the regular season, so he's played some good games, and everything that we're hearing about him, it translates to Ohio State football. So, is there anybody I'm down on? Yeah, I don't know that you bring them in here if they're capable of, coming in, and then you hear stuff. It's like, well, I don't know if it's going to work out. But also, people aren't necessarily out there talking about people that like nobody wants to throw anybody under the bus this early. I know I am interested to see. I'm interested to see Dominic Kelly, because I think, to me, he's the biggest outlier of the group because he's the youngest guy, and it's just curious. You bring in all of these veterans, and then there's just this one young guy, and it's for a reason. And I think that reason is he's probably really, really good.
I think you're right. When we look at how Ohio State has handled the portal previously, it's been a mix. Get a couple of little guys, and then you get a lot of those guys in Dominic Kelly that I consider that like an extension of recruiting. This is a guy that you're coming in who's, basically like you can factor him in with your class of 2025, figuring, all right, he came in with Sanchez and Jordan Woods. He's in their class, really young guy. And now you're bringing this dude in because, essentially you didn't really hit the numbers you wanted to in 25 at corner or in 26. Now you bring this guy in as one of those dudes. So this is like one of Walt's recruits, and, he doesn't just throw darts. So I feel pretty good about that as well. But talking about those wide receivers, I'll go ahead and bring this up. When we look at this wide receiver crew, and interesting, you brought up Kyle Parker. Now, I am of the opinion that Kyle Parker is going to eventually start eating into some of BI's BI's snaps. But I'll admit, while he is more explosive, when you look at his yards after catch, they're damn near identical. I mean, he hasn't really done a whole lot more statistically, but you definitely can see the explosion right off the rip. And I think that's something that I, for one, would like to see. So I think he's going to eat into a little bit of that. Now, across from JJ, I think we're going to see McEwen at the Z. And I think this is just the most logical progression. I don't know what else they're going to do there, but we've seen him play that role. Obviously, he played a lot behind the line of scrimmage as well. But this is a guy that he's about 6 foot and 1/2 inch or so. So he's not really got the ideal size for it, but we've seen him make those downfield catches and make those contested catches on the film as well. And he's maybe another one that I wasn't super high on and have kind of come around a little bit more on as we've gone. I'm really excited to see him. But after those 4 in red, where do we go here? What are you thinking about Chris and Jerquaden, Phil Bell? But what are you thinking about all these guys? Who do you think is going to, and of these freshmen, do you think either one of them are going to get maybe up to the 100 snap mark that we always talk about?
Oh boy, 100 snaps. Let's see. I just want to,
for reference, the year Carnell was a freshman and caught 18 balls, he had about 220 snaps or so.
I mean, Milan had 161 this year, right? So, boy, you would hope that Jerquaden Guilford playing that same Z position could do what Milan did last year, and then actually, do more in terms of production. But I do wonder if the room is now talented enough to keep David Adolph on the sideline. It wasn't last year. So, you also need the physicality that he has, or else they're going to continue to put him out there for the blocking purposes. So, I don't see an issue with the physicality of the first 4, even though you're not necessarily asking Devin McEwen to do that. But we know Brandon Ennis will do whatever it takes. And, Kyle Parker coming in, kind of a, last stop type of thing, wanting to become a more explosive player, show what you can do. I'm really high on Jerquaden Guilford. To me, he's kind of, got some Carnell Tate to him. And I'm willing to see as much as we can of that. I think it's important for people to remember that freshman wide receivers at Ohio State generally don't do much. Don't do much. Jeremiah is the complete outlier. You shouldn't apply anything or any expecting something from anything like what Jeremiah did for Chris Henry Jr. Please don't do that. I think the best I can do. I think when we did a podcast on expectations for Chris Henry Jr. a couple of weeks ago, I think I went with about 22 catches, and I felt kind of bad about it because it felt like it's a little high, just because you're talking about Carnell Tate had like 16 or 18, and Ted Ginn had 25. So you're like somewhere in between Carnell Tate and Ted Ginn, and it doesn't seem like a lot, but there's not many people in between those two guys to give you an idea. I think Carnell, so it's hard to get in there, but I do think they're going to rotate more because you've already got 4 that are going to play. 4 guys have over 30 catches. Kyle Parker is going to play. Brandon Ennis is going to play. I feel bad for like Des Jones. Probably not. That's a bad spot for him in the slot. They're going to have to move Phil Bell out. And he's got that ability to play outside. I don't know how explosive he is. I think we need to figure that out. And I don't know if he is,
he's not, but he can catch.
Yeah. Right. And that's Brandon Ennis though too. Got really good hands and catches the ball right on the first down marker. And then, goes down or whatever. But I'm also looking forward to seeing Brock Boyd. I still think there's something, a guy that lights up Texas like he does, like it's not by chance.
He's a killer, Tone. The kid's a killer. So, really looking forward to that. Let's talk about these freshmen. Now, last year you had 5 freshmen hit that 100 snap mark. Bo with 350, Nate Roberts with 160, Isaiah West 135 on offense. On defense, Devin Sanchez with 323, Zion Grady with 104. If I was to say over under and put it at 4.5, I'm taking the over, but I want to go down the candidates first with you. So here's the candidates, our top 10 candidates for 100 snaps. We've got Chris Henry Jr., Sincere Johnson, Sam Greer, Jay Timmons, Kari Wilder, Jaquaden Guilford, Blaine Bradford, Legend, Jordan Thomas, Kamari Bing. We'll throw Brock in there as well. Obviously, a lot of this is based on circumstances at their position, but going down those, I'm going over 4.5. I think that they're going to probably have about 6. I think I'd go with 6 if I was going to guess.
Yeah, I'm going over 4.5. And honestly, I don't know that Sincere Johnson is one of those guys just because of the depth of the room. And I mean, keep in mind, Arvell Reese didn't have a single defensive snap as a true freshman. And so, if we want to continue to compare the two, we can just continue with that. But I think Jay Timmons will. I think Chris Henry Jr. will. I'll be fascinated to see what they do with Kari Wilder. I think Guilford will, and Blaine Bradford. The depth chart isn't there, so he should do it, right? That shouldn't be too difficult for him. Legend, go ahead and put me down for anything Legend.
Anything Legend.
And then again, I want to see Brock Boyd, and I know they don't want to get crazy freshman happy with the wide receivers, so you can only play so many of them, but I know they're going to get a ton of work this spring because I don't expect Jeremiah to do much this spring. I'm also interested to see what Kamari Bing looks like, and is every corner at corner, and is every safety at safety? Are there corners at safety right now, and where who's playing nickel, and getting a first day baseline for that, and then they'll change it all on Thursday, and we'll just rip up the paper and throw it all away.
It is really confusing with the doggone nickel. I'm looking at it. Let me pull that up. Where the heck is that? So, I got Earl there right now. I think Jay Timmons just makes a perfect nickel. I mean, I think he's like the modern day impact nickel and the type of dude you can do a whole lot with. And I think, if they choose to play him there, he kind of walks right over Miles Lockhart, and he's now in the equation, right off the rip. But with Blaine, like you were saying, there's, it's just a bunch of young dudes and Deshaun Stewart, Leroy Roker, and Blaine back there. And I think that, Deshaun missed some time with injury last year. He's not quite the athlete. I like him a lot, but doesn't bring to the table what Blaine does, probably walking in this year. So certainly there's an avenue for Blaine. When we look at corner, it's like who, can Jordan Matthews maybe potentially supplant Cam Calhoun? How good does he look coming in? There's so many questions in this secondary. How advanced is Dom Kelly? And it's just I see this group of guys, and it's pretty damn loaded. Like, I feel really confident about all the pieces, parts. Just don't know who's going to step up.
And are we talking Jordan Thomas there before people start blowing you up? Jordan?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure that, I'm wondering as I look at this, because I do expect Jay Timmons to work at both inside and outside. And they're kind of maybe changing a little bit what the nickel is at Ohio State in terms of it's a little bit bigger. I'm wondering if, and this is just me right now, just thinking about it, Simeon Caldwell, big nickel type, like a Sonny Styles big nickel, where it's like more strong side linebacker than nickel. And basically you've got Earl Little, who's in the middle. Jay Timmons is smaller, and then like a Simeon Caldwell would be bigger. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't necessarily expect that to happen because I think we'll see what Simeon Caldwell looks like. What's he listed at now? I guess we'll find out tomorrow because, I think everybody expects him to continue to grow and get bigger, which, happened with Sonny. And I'm not doing that. I'm not comparing anybody to Sonny. I'm just talking about, big safeties end up as linebackers eventually. But yeah,
he's coming in really big.
I'm with you on Jay Timmons. I love the dude. I think he's got the makeup for this position. And we talked about it previously. That's all we've ever seen him play is like basically nickel and safety. We haven't really seen him much outside. I like Dom Kelly with only seeing bits and pieces. I think he's your number 3 corner. Cam Calhoun's going to come in this spring kind of as this veteran, but has only really played 1 year of defense essentially in terms of like getting on the field. So we'll see what he can
It was
bring.
a hell of a year though, Tony. The one at Utah.
Yeah.
He was really good.
They love that aspect of the veteran presence, but also he's coming to play. Like this isn't Tristan Gebbia showing up to be the 7th-year, senior quarterback safety GA type of thing. He's going to want to play. And, we'll see where everybody else shakes out. I still want to see Deshaun Stewart. We haven't really gotten to see him. He played a lot of corner in high school. I wonder if he could be a nickel rather than, any kind of safety. We don't know. But I think Leroy Roker is going to be heavily involved this spring too.
Hey, they seem to love Leroy, man. Leroy's looked good every time he's been out there. I'm always so caught up into recruiting. And when you see a guy like that that's so under recruited, it just always like kind of falls out of my mind and I forget him. But Leroy played really good. He looks good. He's big. Just seemed to be a guy that they kind of missed on in the recruiting class. Let's get to the offensive line. But before we do, I want to ask you, when we talk about Austin Saravel and we look at his season, we look at his stats and how he was rated just as a tackle, a guy that gave up 0 sacks on the year. His pass blocking grade per PFF was like 20 points higher than Jordan Seaton's. The run grade was almost identical to Jordan Seaton's. Jordan Seaton is an ideal NFL tackle, right? Number 1 type pick, style body. When we look at Austin Saravel, that's a top 10 tackle in college football last year. He just was. He was a top 10 tackle in all of college football. What would that guy have been worth on the open market if Jordan Seaton gets $3 to $6 million? He's over $1 million player, Tony.
Mm-hmm.
He just is. When we look at Luke Montgomery, Luke's not great, right? But he's getting better every year. I think Luke would have gotten a ton of money out on the portal. Carson Hinsman, a veteran center, 2 years starting experience in the bag, guy who's played against the best of the best. These guys would have gotten a lot of money out on the market, and they're all coming back. Now, you brought in a lot of stuff on the portal. If you were to go bring in a portal lineman, very expensive. There's not a lot of good ones, and you got to get one better than one of the guys you got. So you're spending big bucks. If we're assuming that the funds aren't unlimited, which they're not, that means you got to get rid of some of the other guys that you brought in to bring in that offensive lineman. Now, looking at all that, I thought that they made the right move standing pat on the offensive line. What did you think about that one?
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you. And they finished poorly, right, against 2 pretty darn good defensive lines, but you're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater and all of that stuff. I think an offensive line that returns after you've got 80% of them coming back, like that's good news. This is all good news bringing them back. And they all did, I assume, get paid more for it. As Ryan Day said, one of the reasons they didn't go out to the portal for the offensive line is because they had to pay the offensive line to come back. That sort of thing, where you're talking first team All Big Ten, second team All Big Ten. Like everybody
shrugged when he said that, like, yeah, whatever. It's not, yeah, whatever. They're really expensive guys.
Yeah, no. And as you said, any of these guys on the open market. And the thing is, like, if you would bring in somebody like this, people would be happy because, it's somebody from the portal. Got to be better than somebody we got now. Ethan Onionwa's got to be better than what we got now. And he wasn't good enough to play right guard after not being good enough to play left tackle, or not being able to be good enough to play right tackle. Couldn't play guard. And so they lucked out when they got Phillip Daniels to be good enough to play, because the big money guy, the big money left tackle that everybody is super thrilled about, like maybe the number 2 guy behind Isaiah Worlds. It's like, well, you didn't get him, but hey, you got Ethan Onionwa, season is saved. And then, right away you're hearing like, well, it sounds like it's going to be Austin Seerveld at left tackle. And this was, January last year, or, February or so. And it's like, well, boy, that doesn't sound great. One, because it's not good enough to be Ethan Onionwa, but then Seerveld, that's a guy you just shouldn't doubt. Just stop doubting that guy, because he's been good every step of the way. He's been asked to do all kinds of different stuff, has never shrugged, has never said no, has never turned something down and said, no, I don't want to move there, until the point where there's no choice and you have to move there. He's been willing to do whatever. Ohio State should have as many Austin Seervelds as they can get. I think Jake Cook might be an Austin Seerveld down the road. But I think if you can return your starting center, you can return your tackles, you can return your left guard, and you improve the right guard situation, which might be your right tackle, then you bring your next best tackle in, who is one of your two best tackles. Like, I think this is a formula for success. They're good. 7-8 guys, for certainly the top 7, they feel great about. And then I'm fascinated to see what happens between Sam Greer, Carter Lowe, and then you got to get Deontay Armstrong in there, because he's got to move. He's got to fight those 2 guys off.
Man, as you're saying this, I'm just realizing I totally left him off of the chart, and that's kind of the impression he's made on me thus far in his time at Ohio State. But when I look at who I think will be the starting 5, I think it's the same starting 5 that I was hoping we would have seen at the end of the Purdue game, when Ian Moore came in for an injured Phil Daniels and was just so good at right tackle. I thought, man, you can't take that guy off the field now. He's got to play. And moving Phil Daniels down to guard, where he's just a road grader. He's got an attitude. He's a really good run blocker. He's not great in space. He's not great on an island. He's built more like a guard. It all made perfect sense. And now you get to have that. You get to have that with Ian, bigger, stronger. And to me, that's what it is. Like, I don't even see any reason to mess with it. And I'm sure they will, and they'll play a whole lot. But in the end, I think it looks this way. Maybe Austin and Ian are flipped. But in the end, I think that is a sweet offensive line. Like, I'm really looking forward to it. And when you got Padilla and now Van Sickle, who's got some reps, albeit a rough last game, we know that guy can play football, man. He was in over his head, got overwhelmed. They should have pulled him after 2 series, left him out there to make it look even worse. But with Padilla, with Van Sickle, with Jake Cook, who is talked to him 2 days ago, he's now up to 310 pounds and leaner than he was last year, barrel chested. I also feel great about Jake. And then you got your younger dudes in Sam Greer and Carter Lowe. And I think that one of those guys, one of them is going to hit and be that next top tier guys, but both of them will be fighting next year for a starting role at tackle. Now I'm feeling much better about this offensive line. And I think it is definitely an upgrade without making really any changes from the portal, other than Vashawn Washington, who's a practice guy.
Yeah. 88 starts returning from this offensive line from last year. And throughout their careers. Like, that's a great thing. That is a very good thing. And my only question is, I know Ryan Day talked about Phillip Daniels moving to guard. Like, I want to see him there, and I want to know how willing, no player moves without wanting to, without okaying it. but he's got to want to do it, and he's got to want to do it while he's doing it. And then the only other question I have is the same as you: do these tackles eventually flip? I don't know. I don't think there's any reason to move Austin Sierveld off of left tackle. So we'll see. But yeah, we will see all kinds of different things in camp where. Don't even be surprised if at some point you see Sierveld inside for whatever reason, just because.
I've heard some people mention that. To me, like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like when you're talking about, all right, he's going to be your best tackle, right? Maybe your second best tackle if Ian, gets better and better, which he just might. One of your top 2 tackles, and he'd be your best guard. But if you can choose, all right, I want an All-American guard or an All-American tackle, well, you're going to choose tackle. In addition to that, you're so thin at tackle, and you've got a plethora of guards. I mean, even Carson can move to guard. Like all these guys can play guard and at a pretty high level. So to me, it just doesn't make much sense. But at any rate, man, this is a 5-pack starting that are killers. Moving to the tight end room. Now, Tony, when we talk about the tight ends, I think that bringing in Hunter Welsing and Mason Williams, they're similar to Max Clare and Will Kazmarek. Mason Williams, not quite the blocker that Kaz was, maybe more like Kaz as a junior, right? And that's fair. Hunter Welsing, not quite the receiver that Max Clare was, but a bit of a better blocker. I don't think you've taken a big step back bringing those 2 in. And plus, now you get Nate Roberts year number 2, and I think that elevates what you may lose by the talent, coming down maybe a little from Max Clare. Now Nate's not playing the fullback role. Hunter Welsing at 6'3", 250, probably a little better suited to play that role, which, by the way, Tony, you got 105 dudes you could play around with now. If you're really going back into this old school style of play, is it not time to spend one on a flipping fullback and quit trying to force these the square pegs in the round holes with these tight ends?
Yeah.
They're running it a lot now.
Yeah, no, they are. But especially now that Caden McDonald is gone, yeah, maybe it's time to go get a real fullback. And Caden Curry did it in the past as well. But
he was good.
I think Hunter Welsing, watching him, and Mason Williams does a lot of the same stuff where they'll be motion tight ends where they're in the backfield, and but they both will also line up on the line of scrimmage. So I think they're both kind of versatile. I'm still wondering if Nate Roberts is going to do more. I think he'll do more than fullback, but I do wonder if he is the fullback or if that's something that, they do with somebody else. But Hunter Welsing, like 26, 28 catches last year, lit up Michigan down the seam. Like he's got some downfield stuff. So I don't know that you necessarily need him as a fullback. I do think Nate Roberts ends up being the best of the bunch. I love his all around game, and I think he's going to be really good. Bennett Christian will be the leader in the spring though. So like he'll be out there, and we'll see how that goes. I don't think, I'm with you. I don't think Mason Williams is Will Kazmarek just yet. Let's maybe slow down a little bit on that. But like I said, he's also a guy where you'll see him motioning and, catching some quick stuff and picking up first downs. I think there's room for Brody Lennon here if he's good to go. I like his pass catching ability, but I don't know that that's not what they need out of the 5th tight end. Like last year, the 5th tight end was Nate Roberts, and what they needed out of him is a fullback. And that's why he played. Is there a role for a Brody Lennon in there to be that 5th guy? And Max LeBlanc, he's still I'd say he's a mystery, but I think we know at this point that it's going to be a while if it's going to happen. And I'm not expecting anything really from Nick Latauer right now because there's 6 guys in front of him.
Yeah, I'm with you on
and you're not going to see as much 13 or 14. So that alone is going to limit, I think, some of the playing time.
Yeah, I agree totally. Brody passed LeBlanc last year, and the writing was kind of on the wall for that one with me at that point. But totally with you on Brody, man. I'm a big fan. I think this guy is a juiced up athlete, a guy in high school who ran top speed, was charted by the same software, top speed, as fast as Bo Jackson. And that's like, that's a running back. He's a big tight end, played defensive end. He's a hell of an athlete. He's yoked up. I can't wait to see him now. I bet he's put on quite a bit more muscle, and he's probably ready to go now. And we heard Ryan Day talk in the offseason in his coach's show about and that's the only time we've heard him talk, the coach's show. We heard him talking. Well, never mind. He did a little interview with Jim Rome the other day. But we heard him talk in the coach's show.
Did you rack him?
Did I rack? Man, I forgot that whole lingo. Racking. I used to be a clone way back in the day, man. I didn't even know that guy was still around. And here we got Ryan Day doing shows with him instead of Tony Girdman. I don't know what's up. But Brody, a stud. And I think that, we don't know what we're going to see. What they could potentially use him in something because he really is the best athlete of the bunch. But certainly a guy who is, when we talk about tight ends, Tony, and I want to run this by you. So philosophically, from a roster building standpoint, you got Keenan Bailey, and he gets in on these top tier tight ends like Max Sutter, Brock Williams, these number 1, number 2 type dudes that if you were to bring him in, you would have to spend what Pantoni calls the first round money. And to me, I just don't feel like Ohio State needs or uses a tight end in that way that you want to bring in one of these 6'5", 210 pounds, which is Brock Williams' size. Tell me how that's any better than a free star Brody Lennon, because Brody Lennon cost you league minimum, and he was the number 9 tight end in the country when it was all said and done. I don't understand how it's any better to do that. Tight end, probably the last position I would spend the first round money on if I had it my way. What is your thought about that?
No, completely agree, 100%. Same way with a left tackle. Don't spend on the 5-star left tackle out of high school, and don't spend on the 5-star tight end like USC. This dude better be Brock Bowers as a sophomore and junior.
Dude, serious. Mark Bowman is, yeah.
And even then, is it worth it? No, unless you've got it to spend. It's such a developmental position that it's going to take a couple of years before you get anything back. And if they're playing right away, it's because that's how thin you are at that position. And it's not because they're going to play great. They'll get better, but they're going to make mistakes. And if you're just using them as a pass catcher, then that's not really, then you're still missing the tight end. You're still missing that role. So, and like the Jordan Seaton or the Felix Ojo, whatever, that kind of money is just, it's thrown away. It's burnt. Like, they're not going to, if they do come in and start, it's so rare for a true freshman to come in and start and be anything worthy of any kind of significant NIL, let alone the most expensive player, the most expensive offensive lineman in the country. That's a complete waste. And so Colorado gets 2 years out of him, and then somebody else is going to go overpay for him. Whereas Ohio State was able to keep Austin Sierveld without spending the Jordan Seaton money, and then they could apply that Jordan Seaton money, the other half of it, to the rest of the offensive line. So for the price of a Jordan Seaton, you get an Austin Sierveld and a Luke Montgomery and a Carson Hinsman in terms of covering their raises, basically.
Exactly. I mean, 3 to 6 is what they're reporting. This is obviously a huge range between 3 and 6, but I mean that
for second team all Big 12 line, second team all Big 12 lineman.
Tony, he was a bad pass blocker, man. He was not even good. So yeah, for sure. Let's get to our final grouping, Tone. We have not talked yet about the Rushmen, and this is probably, to me, the most interesting position on the team because, number one, it's my favorite. Wide receiver, I think, is probably as interesting, but I just like the defensive line play the best. Now, James Smith, Edric Houston, you and I both had these guys as co-starters essentially on our initial depth chart. Are you still with that? Do you still think these are kind of a co-starter role here, these two together?
Yeah, as long as Edric Houston can keep up the pace. I do. I think, you're talking, 25 to 30 snaps each guy.
Yeah.
Well, maybe 25 because they're not necessarily always going to be out there for every snap or whatever. But yeah, pretty even. Like, I don't see why not until – and again, I think that's also projection for Edric Houston. Like, you're projecting him to be better. But as you said earlier, like we both agreed, like James Smith, he left some stuff out there last year. And in your contract year now, maybe you're going to put it all together. And if I see James Smith like almost like maybe pulling Edric Houston along, where like not unwillingly, Edric Houston's gonna have to get better to play, and so like he sees playing time dwindling if he lets James Smith just completely overtake everything. So he's got to get better, and I do think he will. And I think he's shown flashes, but as Ryan Day says, we need consistency. We don't need flashes.
It's a big year for him, man. I mean, you come into last year essentially anointed the starter, lose that to a guy that nobody expected could ever outplay you, the guy that should not by rights be outplaying you, and he did in time alone. And then they go bring in another guy on top of you. I'm like, this is it, man. Obviously, Kenny, we've talked about KJ. You and I both feel there could be some potential here for him to play more the weak side and maybe get those opportunities. And maybe that was a way to kind of keep him around, like, hey, because he was, came out and said maybe 5-6 games into the year, he talked to Coach Patricia. He wants to do that. He's happy doing whatever they want him to do. Caging, he said specifically, for the people who don't think they tell him to do that. He said specifically, I'll cage rush, it's fine, but I want to show off my pass rush moves. They let him do it. He looked good doing it. I'm excited to see him in that role, Tony. We've not really gotten a chance to see the full Kenyatta experience, and now he's obviously is big. I mean, dude's like 23 now, right? He's just a big physical mutant. Let's see this guy play. I want to see him rush the passer, man. It'd be a whole lot of fun.
And he's also really good doing what he does on the strong side against the run, all of that, and just containing stuff there. I do, you look at this roster and you're like, well, who are the strong side types? And I don't know, maybe it's just the jersey number that confuses me with Zion Grady, because the jersey number is too skinny to be like a strong side
17? Is that what he wears?
15. So it's like, you need something with a 9 in it somewhere, and it can't be 19 to make you look a little bit bigger. But, and it'll be interesting to see what Bo Atkinson does, because this is his last year, and he really, obviously everybody was pretty disappointed with what happened last year. So do you write him off at this point? I'm sure he doesn't want to be written off, right? So you're going to get the best that he's got, and we'll see if it's good enough. But I'm interested to see Epi Satanale. I know he's excited to go. And then, Kari Wilder, he's certainly got the build and the size to be a strong side guy. I don't know if you're asking for that right away, but I know we all want to see him, and hearing good things about Quay Rusaw as well. So he's a guy that you kind of viewed as maybe just a throw in when James Smith came over, but that's not the feedback I've been getting. So there's some really interesting guys here, but all of about what? I think it's 9 total sacks returning from last year. And I think 7.5 of those are Kenyatta Jackson or so.
Yeah, for sure. We're dealing with a lot of unknown. And you're right. A lot of interesting. I mean, there's just a lot of different body types, man. And when you talk about Quay, my impression was, all right, he's going to be a hybrid that's going to be used in package. I did not think that he was just going to be like, all right, you're another one of these guys. But potentially that's what it's going to be. If it is, I'm really curious to see how he does. I mean, he's a little undersized for that role, I would think, but there's been guys who have gotten it done. Obviously you've got, the freshmen this year. I don't think any of these freshmen outside of Kari are going to play. And you've got Jason Moore, who is, former top 50 recruit, got all the size in the world. And it's just not happened yet. Larry's praised his size as being the perfect build for a 3-tech. Will he wake up? Will something snap for him? Could he potentially contribute? Like, if he does, that would be pretty damn huge for this defense.
Yeah, to allow them to go 5 deep on the inside when there will be times where maybe they only have one tackle out there. I think if they can get anything out of Jason Moore, because he's such a different size, he's different than all of these other guys, 6'6" and 310. Yeah. So I know they've talked about the example of Taiwan Malone, that it all came together at the end for him, and so they're telling Jason Moore, there's only your 4th year, it can still happen, just got to keep working, and nobody's going to do more encouraging of his players than Larry Johnson. And so I think Jason Moore will go into the spring feeling good, and we'll see where it goes from there. But he's got some work ahead of him based on the depth chart.
For sure. A lot of interesting things. All right, my man. I appreciate you so much for joining us here at Buckeye Huddle Primetime. We appreciate you all for joining us tonight live on Buckeye Huddle Primetime. Please do subscribe to Buckeye Huddle. It is the currency by which we operate in this here space, and we need your support more now than ever, man. There's just tons of channels doing what we're doing. As you know, we're the best. Nobody works harder than my man Tony G and Tom. So please give us a subscription, and we will talk to you soon. Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.